this panel is going to focus on working in international interdisciplinary projects and proposals. And all the panelists are going to be talking from their own perspectives and with their different experience. So I hope that we can get a very kind of like, a broad understanding of the experiences, the challenges, the rewards of working in interdisciplinary international contexts, be it projects, already funded projects, or be it a proposal stage. First, I'd like to have our panelists kind of introduce themselves and briefly let them tell where they're coming from. You have obviously met most of our panelists already, but repetitio mater studiorum est, so it's not a bad thing to have a little repetition. Gökhan, would you start?
Yeah. Thank you for Terry. I will introduce myself about my international project background. I have worked many international projects about the main education, because the main subject is science education. But at the first, I can say something about how the proposal organized. When we talk to international project, we imagine...
Can we just do introductions first? Then I will go to questions.
Okay.
Just where you're coming from, maybe your disciplinary backgrounds, and university.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, my background is science education, and I'm the member of Customer University, and I work in many EU projects, funded EU projects, and also some local projects. And that's all now.
Thank you. Where is Kastamonu?
In Turkey.
Johanna, please.
So I'm Johanna Pöysätarhonen from the local, the Finnish Institute for Educational Research. So my background is in educational sciences and educational technology. So I work as a senior researcher in the institute.
Okay, hello. So I'm Basili. You already know me. I work as a director for migration and social policy at CASE, which means that I oversee all our projects in those areas. And as CASE, we are an independent think tank, so we are only project-based. So we only function as long as we do have projects, so we are heavily involved in all possible international research calls.
Okay, Taina.
Okay, thank you and nice to be here. My name is Taina Saarinen. I'm from this university as well, from the same department as Terhi and Johanna. I'm a research professor and director there, and I would kind of continue from this. We have 65-70% of our funding comes from external sources. So we are applying for all kinds of projects all the time. My own background is also a bit interesting. I have a background in applied language studies and all kinds of general societal topics, disciplines. And I've been working in two different fields, the field of applied language studies and the field of higher education studies, both of which are sort of phenomenon-oriented rather than disciplinary theory-oriented fields. So that already makes it, you can call it interdisciplinary, you can call it transdisciplinary, but I call it messy most often.
And then we have Peter.
Hi, so I'm Peter Gray. I'm a visiting professor in European projects at Nord University, and I also have the pleasure of working for CASE. I should say that CASE saved the day with METEOR, because at one stage, although the project had been developing for some time, we had a potential coordinator who pulled out, and CASE stepped in and saved it from disaster, and very successfully too. So thank you very much to Basili and Martina, Magda and all the team at CASE for that. So my background is primarily in teacher education and science education, but that's only because I was doing projects on those topics. So recently, as I get older, I'm more interested in the project form rather than the content. And as you've seen from my presentation, I'm kind of cynical about the whole thing, but also incredibly excited. So thanks very much for having me on the panel.
Thank you, everyone. We already heard very briefly that all of you have this various experiences working in different types of projects. Would you want to say a few words about sort of your roles in various projects? Have you been kind of like leading projects? Have you been kind of in a PI role, so local partner leader in projects? Have you been working as researchers or research assistants in projects, which may be international, maybe interdisciplinary, maybe both? Shall we start with Basili first?
Right. As we need to engage in international projects to survive as an organization, we take all the roles that are available. So we do coordinate METEOR, and here I serve as a coordinator. We quite often have our own work packages within Horizon projects. When I'm currently leading a work package in another Horizon. I finished another one recently where I met Peter actually. We also try to find another sources for international projects when our role is sometimes smaller, only maybe technical for some certain tasks, or sometimes we do bilateral international projects as well. So it varies. There's a lot of different sources for financing of those projects and a lot of different roles that we can serve.
Okay. Johanna, you want to say?
Okay, in my work, I think most of the projects have been funded by the Research Council of Finland, so they are typically international and multidisciplinary at the same time. So that's in the that's encouraged in the that's not only encouraged, but it's embedded in kind of embedded in the funding criteria. So I have already as a PhD student, I did some. I didn't do my PhD here, but I participated in Finnish projects for some data collection, and then later on had my postdoctoral project from academia, and then we have been writing applications and also received some funding as a group member, and now I've been applied as a PI. So the roles have been developing over time. Yeah.
That tends to be the case, I suppose, as one sort of advances on one's career. Gökhan.
Yes, I have worked several different roles in the project. I have worked in task leader and also some cross-cutting work package, supporting some work packages. But my main role is just designing a training design, and also impact and dissemination. And I have worked mainly science education part in the intersection in different projects. But in many projects we worked in intercultural and interdisciplinary section. That's why I have many experiences between working with different cultures and different perspectives, and also disciplines in the STEM education and the other part of the teacher education. It depends on your roles about your experiences and the background. It's the good combination. How can you affect? How can you support in the who can manage the main roles in the work packages? In your time, in your proposal, you think about the beginning of the decided the role of the participants. Early deciding the role of the participants is important to giving a role. In the beginning of the and end of the picture, there's a question about the roles and the leadings. Yeah, it depending on the background and your experiences, previous experiences during your PhD, or also your undergraduate level, or in your master level. It shows your expertise. That's why you clear understanding who has different abilities, different cultures, working styles. beginning of the organizing a research proposal. That's the important part of the who is the lead, who is the support, who is to manage these work packages or the other ones. Thank you.
Shall we go to Peter next, and then I'll give to Dinah.
Okay, so yeah, I kind of started as a research assistant or research fellow, as it was called at the time, on a British national project, which was called Teaching and Learning Research Project, or research program rather, which I think was actually an excellent idea, where a number of separate projects were coordinated by one kind of central organisation run from the University of Cambridge. That was on teacher induction, and that produced really good results. And because we had good results, we turned up at European conferences to present those, and I bumped into Norwegians at European conferences. The Norwegians were friendly and would occasionally buy you a drink, so I stuck with them, and as a result of that, we got our first Framework 7 project in 2009, and I became the project manager on that, working for NTNU in Trondheim. So I kind of started at the top and worked down, because after that I wasn't involved in a successful Horizon project in a serious way until METEOR. But I did lots of other jobs in between, all of which were concerned with European projects, other people's Erasmus projects or other people's Horizon bids. And yes, it's been very messy. I think I like the word messy, and there's always something going on. It's not necessarily going to lead anywhere, but it's always fun while you're doing it. And my main concern really has been avoid doing any serious work. So I've never done any research to speak of, and I've never done any teaching. So some people might say that was a good thing, some people might not, but I've enjoyed it anyway. As I said in the presentation, having conversations with interesting people from interesting places about interesting topics is really the best thing there is in this job, and I've just done lots of that really. So yeah, it's been great, but as I think Johanna said, was it Tina? It's messy, and that's the great thing about it. So everything is a mess, but it's always good. Thank you.
So Peter, I'm glad to hear that I'm beating you to it, because my very first postdoc was in an FP6 project. So next we go to Dinah.
Thank you, and yeah, thank you, Peter. And I just want to emphasize that for me also messy is good. It's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. It stirs up things in your brain. But I don't want to repeat everything that everybody's been saying. Very similar experiences from very similar roles. But just one thing, I might say that my first job as a coordinator of an international project did not take place at a university, but at a liberal adult education institute. So I was working for 4 years in the late 90s at an adult education institute. And we had what were then called Socrates projects. I think they would be Erasmus now, but like Socrates Grundtvig, which is an adult education project in the European frameworks. And you can also work outside of a university and doing these kinds of things. Yeah, but yeah, messy.
Next, I'd like to hear from your experiences. What has been somehow most challenging? And this can be from a project perspective, like, budgets or schedules or whatever, or it can be about the sort of translating the interdisciplinarity of the project in a way in which you have to kind of work with colleagues from very different disciplines. I certainly know that in my first FP project, we have a lot of physicists and economists and like econometrics people, really. And I'm a completely qualitative researcher with a history background. So I was like completely lost. But now I'd like to hear from your experience. What has been most challenging? Anybody can start. And I'm also hoping that you can also reflect on each other's comments if it seems relevant.
I can say something about the most challenging part in this project. You mentioned about you should work in different cultures, different subject, and all participants comes different expectations, and you have to align these expectations, and also the timeline. You have to follow that timeline. This could be big challenge for during the implementation of the project. And also I can say about different interpretation of quality, different interpretation of impact, and different interpretation of the success during the process, because everyone has a interpretation of the proposal and also the aims of the project, and it could be not too clear alignment between the teams and the members, but it doesn't negative effect. Actually, this tension between the teams could be improve your quality. Yesterday, Jean explained uncertainty. The uncertainty, yeah, it's seen problematic, but it's important to improve the quality of the project. That's why we can say, yes, these challenges improve our quality of the project. I can say the last things.
Okay, I continue on that a bit more in the micro level. It can be even very conceptual, even though you have like neighbor kind of disciplines like psychology and education, you can have really different kind of conceptions on, like, for example, term cognitive can mean very different. It's very different meaning for psychologists than for an educational scientist. So that's one term that we really spend a lot of time. That was a central term in that project in one way. So, but then you also, both of you learn. I think you need these kind of contradictions that you will also go forward. It's not like a bad thing. So, like you said, the quality will be. But those are things that even though you have made, like, for example, 2 rounds of the research proposal, and only then it still comes out that you don't have the same conception of the term, like central term. That's quite interesting. But that's how these kind of it brings a new food for thought in a way. In this is just one example, but there were many in this kind of
So I would say that for PhD students, especially those socialized in certain higher education systems, jumping into European projects might be a huge step out of their comfort zone. I know it was for me, and I'm talking mainly about our comfort zone as our, let's say, sphere of academic interest. As in Poland, 99% of PhDs are not done within any broader project, so PhD students have absolute freedom in a way to choose their topic. So you just sit down and you think, what is really interesting for me? And then when you have national funding schemes, in Poland they are also open calls. So again, you sit down, what am I good at, what interests me? And then there are usually projects done within one institution by one PI. And then you go to European projects, and obviously there are some open calls. You can apply for ERC grants, which are open.
European Research Council.
Yeah, but the European Commission very much likes to point you out directly to the subject that they want you to research. And then this is a completely different type of thinking. So yesterday I was approached by one of you to talk about how to deal with this interdisciplinarity within the teams, if we have physicists and sociologists, for example. So one project, Horizon project that I'm working on right now, leading one of the work packages. You remember I'm a sociologist and a lawyer. I mostly deal with migration and higher education issues. And the project is on the impact assessment of marine carbon removal techniques. So how to capture the carbon dioxide and store it in the oceans. It is a quite, that was my face when I heard that we are applying for that and that I need to actually prepare a task. And so as you can imagine, this is a huge step out of my comfort zone in terms of my area of interest. But this is not the same. It was not pulling me out of my area of expertise, because what we do there is we have a work package on public perception, on governance. What I do personally there is try to simulate the negotiated rulemaking workshops to see how you can actually, in a participatory way, create rules and legal regulations for those techniques. So I'm doing what I know what I can do. But in a broader framework, when I meet on those consortium meetings with all those marine biologists and engineers and people talking about deployment of sensors in Caribbean, and this is, I would say it's a similar experience to you talking to econometrists, but I sometimes even don't understand some words they're saying. It's getting better. The project is already halfway through. I understand something. But at the same time, I feel like I can contribute to that with my expertise. But I didn't have any freedom to choose the area. I just had to think how I can contribute to that project. So this is really, you have to switch your thinking if you want to participate in that kind of projects. And this is, I think, the exercise you will be also doing in your groups.
Taina, your experiences.
Yeah. Again, being among the last ones to respond, I have to agree with what everybody else has been saying, and I think I think Johanna was talking about the difficulty with concepts, and I think it's definitely that, but also more than that. It's in interdisciplinary cooperation. It's about how we understand research, how we understand knowledge, how we understand the world ultimately. So I guess I would say that the most difficult situations have been the ones where people have been. And that includes me, I mean, also, where people have been sort of rigid or unwilling to learn or unwilling to negotiate their own pet ideas or their own, disciplinary or paradigmatic ideas. And I think those are often difficult. It's definitely a learning experience, definitely super fun to try to, immediately after this panel, I have a meeting with labor and education economists, which is completely outside of my comfort zone. But we are looking for some joint phenomenon that we think that we could illuminate from our different perspectives. So we don't always have to understand each other, but we have to be willing to do work together. So I think that's the thing. And I just have to say that also some difficult things in international projects have been very personal. There have been fathers dying and people getting cancer, and I think that's also something when you work with somebody for years and you develop a personal relationship with them, and that's also going to be, you have to be prepared for all kinds of things in international cooperation.
We go to Peter, and then I promise that Taina gets to answer the next question first.
Okay. Yeah, well, first of all, just like to say, Taina, I really need a labour market economist for a project, so speak to me later. No, I mean, that's how it happens. You suddenly see somebody that's got the expertise you want, and I'll need to talk to them, which is exactly what happened with Case and the METEOR project, really. I saw Case in the context of the other project that Basili was doing, and realised that they were a good team that could do something good with this project. But no, I just wanted to echo what Taina said about emotion, and exactly the same things in many ways. In the first project, S-Team, where I was project manager, we lost our coordinator a couple of years into the project. He unfortunately passed away very early. Then we had another coordinator who passed away 6 weeks after he retired, which was also very sad. So yeah, emotion is a big thing, and I think the central problem emotionally in doing what I've done certainly has been the fact that you fail probably 95% of the time, because the odds of being funded for a European project, no matter how good you are always very slim. Sometimes it's maybe 1 in 5. That's really good, but normally it's like 1 in 20 or even 1 in 100 sometimes. So there's that emotional thing of getting a bond with people, getting that interdisciplinary and international collaboration going. It's really like having continual series of extramarital affairs over 20 years. You fall in love with somebody, you have a relationship with them for a period, and then it all goes horribly wrong. I'm not saying that from personal experience, I have to say. But in the project field, yes, you have that emotional thing of you get the rejection letter from the commission, a few months after you put in what you thought was a really, really good proposal. And that's quite hard to take. And it's not so much for yourself, but it's for the other people in the project team who have put all that effort in, and it goes nowhere. And I've constantly been trying to find solutions for that. I haven't really got there yet, but it's something that's on my mind, because that effort shouldn't be wasted. In METEOR, you're going to do a proposal which essentially won't get funded in a direct sense, but you won't be disappointed because you've built up that emotional energy and that head of steam in the project that will then take you to other things. So I think the experience of doing this in what might be called a sandbox environment in IT thinking, a safe space where you can practice collaboration, none of us had that. So this is a good opportunity to do the nice stuff without the pain of failure, basically.
I can sympathize with the payment failure, like the failure to get the funding. We just failed a proposal where there were 161 submissions, and the Commission had indicated that they are going to fund 3 or 4. So the success rates are really very tiny sometimes. But as I promised, that I guess the first question. So what have been, the best things about these projects, like the most elating things, or the most fun success stories, personal best experiences?
For me, they are often the unexpected. Like you are invited, you get invited to a lot of, I get invited, a lot of people in this room get invited to be in an advisory board of a project. And sometimes it's just, you comment a couple of times a year some of their texts or something like that. But in one particular project, I was invited into the advisory board, and it actually turned out for me to open a completely new field, because we started working together much more than we had originally planned. So the unexpected pleasure of getting to know human geographers really made my brain work in a different way than I had thought. And it's always, and I would also think that it's important to work with people you like. It doesn't have to be like fun people, but people you like working with, people who inspire you, people who give you ideas, and people also who you can disagree with in a good way. Like, it doesn't mean that you need to agree with them all the time and do the same kinds of things, but have heated conversations and bang doors and eat well and write together. And I think those kinds of experiences are the ones that I'm still sort of addicted to somehow.
Who would like to go next? We can mix and match the order. It doesn't have to be the sitting order. Kakan?
Similar things. The most rewarding during the international project, I think seeing how different disciplinary lenses enrich the same research question, and also end of the co-creation process outputs none of the partners could realistically produce alone. That's why it's a common understanding on also the negotiation process in whole, not just preparing a proposal and implementation also in the project. That's the most rewarding part. I agree with the inspiring section about, for example, I work with Peter in the national project. We will produce a document for the science teachers, STEM teachers. He gives me many inspiring time during this process. That's why I can say the most rewarding process is being a good researcher and also being a good academician. Also the project members beyond the project timeline. That's the most rewarding part for me during the international projects.
Yes, I think I have quite identical notes here, but I think one of the like I think you have here also that the output is something that we arrive at something that you can't reach independently. So that's more than some of the individual parts, and all this kind of learning and sort of growing as a researcher has been most rewarding, and also quite typically like in these research projects that are funded by the Research Council of Finland, there's a lot of data collected and that work continues even though the funding is already finished. So I have I was just counting this morning, I have one colleague that I've been working now I think 11 years, and we are still meeting once a month or something. We have something going on, not that much, but something is going on, and those people become your more than colleagues, and those kind of relationships, and it opens a lot, and it also has to do with that you act as responsible researcher, and you do your own part, and you keep on what you have promised, and those things those bring quite much forward.
All right, so rewarding. I think I want to talk about two things from my personal, individual perspective, let's say. So first of all, the international projects, let's say this project, it allows me to be here today. It allows me to be
a bonus, certainly.
Yeah, in Spain in 2 weeks, in Verona in May when we have our consortium meeting. So it is something beautiful that I can visit beautiful places, but I can also see how research is done in different environments, how projects are implemented in different environments. It allows me to grow as a researcher, as a project manager, and so on. There is a quite big discussion, especially in some countries, for example in Poland, about the international mobility of researchers. There are ideas that some period of international mobility would be the requirement for the promotions at the university. I have very ambivalent feelings for that, as it is quite difficult to, for example, have a 1-year move when you have a family, kids and so on. It's not as easy, especially with a lack of support for you and for all people traveling with you. But these projects give you opportunity to experience that international environment without necessarily moving out, without turning your life around, and I think this is very precious. And another thing is that it kind of I was never interested in being an expert in one very narrow field. I know some people that they specialize in one very, very, very small narrow thing, and they are now world leading experts on that, and good for them. But this bores me a lot, like when I think that I would deal with the same thing over and over. So this kind of a forced diversity that is forced by the European projects, European Commission, it suits me actually. I like challenging myself with new topics, and it is something in it what Peter is saying about just talking to people. As one project quite often result in another. You talk to people, then you bump into someone, then you talk, and something is born out of it. It is like a river that when you go in, it just takes you somewhere. It can, crash you into the rocks, but it can also bring you far, far away. And this is quite interesting. It is very difficult to start, especially for young researchers, I would say, to jump into that river. So this is kind of this opportunity that we wanted to give you here, to talk to your peers, to talk to us as well. To have this jump start into that would hopefully result in you participating in many, many projects in your career.
Peter, what are your thoughts?
Well, first of all,
rewarding?
Quite a few things. First of all, I'd like to say thanks to Rokan, because in the project that he mentioned, he said some very nice things about me, but actually Gökhan did most of the work. So I think he needs to take credit for that. That was a really good bit of work that he did, or we did together. But that had an interesting series of unexpected consequences. I want to tell you about that because the way that things go is very strange. So we did basically a kind of guidebook for inquiry-based science education, and that, I guess, was used in Turkey for some time. It was fine. And then after a few years, I was invited to do some training in Turkey on inquiry-based teaching for science teachers in the vocational sector. So I went and did that training, and it was incredibly well paid, unusually, because mostly we don't get a lot of money for what we do, but it was very well paid for what it was, and I had a great time. And one of the mini thing that was rewarding there was people afterwards going, Peter, 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 which I really appreciated. But that's not the end of the story. So with that money, I gave it to, I guess, a colleague, friend from Ethiopia who I've never met. But he was a guy, Tirullo Tumebo, who wanted to do a PhD in science education at NTNU in Norway. That didn't happen for a variety of reasons, mostly financial. Eventually, he got a position, PhD position at the University of Minnesota in the States, based in Minneapolis. You can see where this is going. And he unfortunately wasn't able to complete the program, but he decided to stay in the States. He brought his family over, and now they're locked down in a back room somewhere in Minneapolis because of Trump's actions and the ICE and what they're doing, and because they can't tell the difference between Somalis and Ethiopians, which is a disgusting situation. Everybody was trying to do their best for him, and it's just really sad he's ended up in that situation. But it shows the kind of long tail that projects have. And I also wanted to say in the same context that our friend Gultekin from Hacettepe University, who's part of the METEOR project, he once said to me, S-Team, the project, science education, made a difference in Turkey. Just a simple statement like that. Not a journal article, not a series of statistics, just a statement. It made a difference. And that really affected me. And a couple of other people over the course of time have said a few things like that. But that's what really gets you, not the journal articles or the reports or anything else. It's we made a difference. And that's what I want from METEOR. And METEOR is genuinely the best and the most exciting project I've been involved in. It's the one I've always wanted. And so I'm absolutely over the moon, as they would say in English cliche. I'm really, really pleased that it's happening and that you're all here. So thanks a lot.
I'm hearing a couple of you saying that somehow the projects sometimes kind of almost happen by accident, or they start by accident. Two people get talking, or they meet each other in a previous project, and they start thinking about, oh, this could lead to something interesting. And then on the other hand, if I read you correctly, Peter, you're kind of saying that this is an idea that you had for like a really long time, and then at some point the opportunity to get it funded kind of presented itself. I was hoping that maybe whoever would like to reflect upon this, how do projects start? How does the idea start? Or does it start from an idea? Or does it start from people? Or does it start from a funding opportunity? Like your experiences, how do projects start? Who wants to go?
Well, maybe if I can just start on that, because, it has been a series of accidents. My entire career, most of the projects I've been involved in have been accidents, but accidents with causes. So for METEOR, for example, we were very lucky that the Commission came out with a call that was exactly what I'd been thinking about doing for a long time and what other people had been thinking about doing. And we'd had a lot of conversations about it, but nothing had ever really happened. So we were extremely lucky that the right call came along at the right time. And the processes within the European Commission whereby that happens are very complex. We have scientific officers, policy officers, different departments that have different interests. Sometimes you see a call for proposals, which has obviously been put together by a group of people who all want to get their own thing in there. And there's a current one that we're working on like that, where just about every concern that the EU has ever had in the educational sphere is bundled into one call. You obviously can't deal with the whole thing. Other times, as with the METEOR one, it's really clear and you say, yes, that's it. That's really straightforward. It's easy to answer. We know what we can do. The idea is there. We just need the people to do it, and we got them. So yeah, I think it is, for me, it's 90% accidents. If I was a clever person, and it would have been 90% planning, but I'm not. So I never plan anything. So yeah, it's the unplanned things that are the best, really. But the most amazing coincidences and things happen, and you've just got to. Somebody said to me once, I'd said to my friend Colin Smith, I think I mentioned in the proposal, Peter. I said to him, I've been really lucky in my career, and he said, no, you make your own luck. And I think that's largely true. It's not, I don't want to be promoting myself, but you put yourself in situations and you say things which enable opportunities to open up. You don't just talk about the weather or the football, you just get on with talking about what you'd really want to do in the project area, and that usually produces a positive reaction. So, still messy, but good.
Dana, you look like you want to say something.
Yeah, our previous boss, Terhis and Johannes and mine, once said that human beings, we can describe our actions rationally, but it doesn't make us rational. So we and I think the planning is really great. It's really great to plan, and just to understand that the planning leads to different outcomes than you planned. Like the plans are always there, and the thinking is always there, and your ideas are always there. And the more you talk to different people, the more they change and bump into each other and change into something else. So I don't even remember what the original question was, but I think my point was that it seems completely accidental, but it's not. But also you might plan and it wouldn't come out as planned. So I would say that it's probably a combination of having your own ideas and being open about them with others, and willing to also negotiate. Like sometimes you have to negotiate your pet ideas. You have this pet idea, you think it's the best thing in the world, and nobody else gets it, and you have to start negotiating, and then things change. And so I'm guessing, I never thought I would say that planning is great, because I don't see myself as that kind of a person, but I know that the plans are there, just accepting them changing all the time and leading to unexpected things.
Any other experience, and how do projects start? How do proposals start? Do they start from an idea or partners or funding opportunity, or just by accident?
So I would say from a practical, let's say, point of view, as my job is to organize my team in a way that we win enough projects for them to have work, for me to have work. So we need to keep going, and there are it's about 100 ways of how projects start, but let's narrow them down to two general ones. So one is that we initiate it. We are the great initiator, let's say. So we see the call, and then there is either an idea for a project or an idea for a partner. One or two organizations that you see the title and you say, okay, this would be fun to do with this and this partner, because we do have a previous connection. We have our own experience of working in similar fields. So this is one way, and then we are looking for other partners and trying to lead the project, and this is one way. The other is that some other organization, somebody else did that part for us. So they were the initiator, they had the idea, and then you have to somehow make yourself available to fill in the spots that they need to fill in. So they are looking for a certain partner that has certain expertise. Then maybe they remember you from your previous projects, or somebody suggests you to them. So this is coming back to this river. You have to be in it, kind of to be noticed. So this is a difficult part, but it's both. Sometimes we start with a project, and then it depends. Sometimes it's an idea, sometimes it's a partner. And sometimes we just wait. And we couldn't actually survive as organizations deciding only on one of those approaches. If we just wait, we couldn't get enough projects. And if we just initiate those, we will be overburdened with the amount. We are usually, my team of 5-6 people top, we were submitting 4 horizons last deadline, leading 2 of them, and that was definitely too much. So, yeah, you need a bit of diversity.
What about Johanna? There, you talked about national projects that are funded by Finnish Research Council. Does the project start look different for kind of like nationally funded projects than EU funded projects?
Yeah, I think it's because it's not based on certain call that has to include. So it's more like maybe you're building on more cumulative fashion, building on your ideas and earlier work, and it kind of grows. Often, like the earlier project, there are maybe some questions coming out, like from the previous work, and then you wanna continue on that direction, or yeah, it's kind of there are might be some similar, the same collaboration continues, for example, and it also depends a bit on your role, of course. What is your role in that project? Yeah, I think it's kind of more cumulative and more based on the ideas. And then you might, when you have if you have sort of idea, you might make one kind of make it tailor it to the different instruments, or also the same idea. For example, you can for example, in Finnish-based instruments, you do for one, and then you kind of tailor it to the next one a bit differently, and so you can use the same kind of idea and maybe the networks partly in different proposals. So it's really, I think it's in that way, because there's not a certain call behind.
Jokan, what are your experiences?
Okay. The answer of this question is not easy. Everybody mentioned about their own experiences. In my experiences, in the strong proposal rarely start with a call text alone. I think they usually begins with shared understanding or shared concern or problems, and then a small core group and trusted partners working on these idea to enlarge the idea. Then matching a funding for this idea, and the successful project emerge when the idea proceed to consortium, not the other way around. Because some of them we find a consortium then searching an idea or the call, it's not too matching easily. And the partners brought in clear intellectual reasons, not just the coverage. I think it's the best way of starting in the international project. But it's not a one way. This is just my experiences to prepare a strong proposal during my period in the beginning of the working in a project, and now this is my perspective.
What our participants are going to be doing in the next 12, 14 months or so is that they're going to be putting together these transformative research and innovation proposals. And as part of that, obviously, they have to come up with a consortium. The foundation of the consortium is the group, the people, the institutions that are in your peer mentoring group. How would you how does a consortium come to be built? How do the partners get drafted in? How does the process go of kind of deciding the roles and the shared vision and who is going to take up the task of coordinating? Could you share your experiences on those? Whoever wants to go first. Okay, Vasily.
Yeah, I can maybe start on that. So this is kind of like Gökhan said, actually. So what we usually do is we try to have a small group of core members first. the organizations that we know that we share a shared vision, that we know that they are good partners in drafting the application, because there are also different types of people, different types of organizations. Some people just want to write their part and forget about the rest, and some organizations are heavily involved in drafting the applications, and we do prefer working with them. There is a core. We see how our core corresponds to the call text, and usually we identify some weak spots that we are missing someone with an expertise in X, Y, Z, or missing someone with an outreach somewhere. And then we try to complement our core members with other partners that have the necessary experience. I would say this would be the approach that I would take.
What about Peter? What's your experiences? I know that I got invited to this consortium in a taxi on the way to Frankfurt Airport.
Yeah, well, that's usually how it works. No, I think Basil is right that basically you need to start with a small group, because you need to have, as you say, a shared vision of what you're going to do, whether that results from a call or from something else. And it's very difficult to achieve that in a large group right from the start. So the kind of recommended ruthless process is that you start with the core group and then you invite in people who have exactly the right technical skills or technical profile to fit into the consortium. However, there's always a compromise, because there are always people you want to invite in because they're your friends. And I think that's, on the whole, a good thing. Sometimes it might, on the face of it, seem you get a suboptimal consortium, but usually it works better in the end. And I remember an experience when we were forming the S-Team project back in 2008, and there was one professor at, I think, University College London, who was the top guy in the field in science education. Gokhan probably knows who I'm talking about. And basically, I sent him an email and he didn't reply. And 4 weeks later, I sent him another email. He didn't reply to that. And I thought, no point. Somebody who's not going to reply to emails is no good to have in a project. And you've got to have a certain level of responsiveness and enthusiasm and interest and energy from people. And even if they don't have on the supposed technical skills or the expertise for that particular role, they can probably find it. And in a lot of European projects, the theme of the project is not something where there's a specific pool of academic expertise anyway. We know lots of people who are very good at doing doctoral education, but nobody has done a project exactly like this before. So we're all acquiring the expertise as we go along. This academy is experimental, really. This is a laboratory for finding out what works for postgrads, getting together, forming groups and doing proposals. So, yeah, it's 50-50, cold-hearted, ruthless thinking about who would be best in a certain area, and 50%, yeah, I like him, I like her, let's get them in and let's make it work from there.
It's super important. You're going to be working with those people for 3, 4, 5 years. You can't hate them, then they can't be difficult.
You only know afterwards if you can hate them. Taina.
Can I continue from that? Again, completely agree. And I think that preparing a consortium, you have to start several years earlier by building connections and building contacts and doing small 10,000, 30,000, 40,000 euro projects with them, in order to learn how people work and if they deliver what they promise and if they are trustworthy. And again, also, it doesn't harm if you like them. Like, seriously, you need to be able to work with these people for several years. But I think building connections a lot before the big ones. Like right now, well, the people I'm meeting at 12, we started working together on a 30,000 euro project 3 years ago. Now we work on a 3 million project together, and now we are trying to apply another 100,000 project together. So it doesn't, like, you have different levels of cooperation with these people, but you can go back to them about different topics. And we've already talked about the different kinds of funders as well. Some funders go for this blue skies thing. Whatever good idea you have, you apply for that funding. Other funders go for very sort of strictly steered themes and topics, and that also affects the thing. But go to work with people you trust and like.
Okay. Gökhan or Johanna?
Okay,
Johanna?
so I think I have quite the same to say, but like building, I've written here that building on the existing academic networks, and they bring new people, the people that you know, and then like I sometimes we had this kind of interesting. It was a bit like this cost action proposal with the German Federal Ministry of Education. So they asked me if I would know someone in Estonia, and I invited him and so on and so on. So it was building, and we have kind of met with these people in a conference in New Zealand, and that started all there, and little by little we got to know each other. So it's typically, but be open to bring new people and to build a kind of coherent. It depends, of course, what you are going to, what is the goal for the project, what kind of expertise is needed.
Can I just quickly add to what Johanna was saying, that there's a lot of funding out there for networking and meeting and workshops. And that's also good funding, like have 10,000 euro to bring everybody into one place and get to know each other and work together. Those kinds of things are really good preparation for bigger consortiums as well.
I had similar experiences about how to involve in consortium. In many SRA conferences, we have welcome reception and also gala dinner. One of my project, I involved in SRA meal. For example, we talked with Peter in SRA 2019 in Turkey about this project. He invited us and explained something about his understanding about PhD education in national and also European level. Yes, the network is important to involve the consortium or produce a consortium for the project. But the other part is that you are also starting a new understanding or new phases during this project. You can listen to other PMG group members and understanding the culture, ways of working, and also the values, priorities, and institutional pressure to understand. Then you can decide who leads, who supports, and why during your proposal, because you are just know is just a one day, and during the process you understand your strong area or the background, and also how can proceed, how can support. During the process, you decided how to shape your consortium in your proposal. I can say this one, but you decided the early role clarification in your proposal and to negotiate all of them, not to assume being a collaboration during the process, but intentionally decided to roles and the consortium works beginning and during the process. I can say about new consortium starts during your settings.
Please do.
What I would like to say about the network, so the building of the network starts now for you. Like I had, like for this last Research Council of Finland application, 3 of the collaborators were from my doctoral, when I was doing my PhD. One I met in Hailuoto in northern part of Finland in the winter school, and others when I was doing my PhD. So it's really, it starts, and you can build it from now, and it's very important.
Next, I would like to open the floor for questions from the participants. I do have one question for the panel still in the end, if we have time for it. But for now, are there any questions on the floor? And I'm going to steal a microphone from Taina. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That was very interesting to get insights into your experience. I think it's maybe, or I'm not sure if it's a question or a comment, maybe a bit cynical, or like a lot of my colleagues, both at my home institution, which is also NUR University, so I think we're kind of colleagues, Peter, and like also other colleagues are kind of moving away from applying for EU funding, simply because they say it's so much documentation and it kind of removes the time where I can do the actual research. And this is kind of one thing. The other thing would be kind of that I myself feel sometimes that the language of like these European funding is kind of very fancy, very bloomy, and very far away from my own research field, which can be like urban Norwegian areas. And I find sometimes the translation from like this fancy research to where actually my research happens, like teachers in rural Norwegian areas, very difficult. Like this translation from like the English language to the Norwegian rural context. So I guess it's two questions or comments in one. So how would you argue what would be your argument for actually apply for European research? I guess it's my question.
Okay. Can I just jump in on that one, because it's something that's actually ongoing at the moment, and you should have a discussion with various people in NURD, because we're doing a proposal right in that area as we speak. It's a good point about the translation from airy-fairy language and things that are EU priorities and kind of pick up a life of their own just because they're EU priorities to the things that you're doing in your own research project. But let me just very briefly explain our thinking in this current context. So there's a call, I'm giving some secrets away here, but there's a call that's basically connecting the idea of basic skills to the idea of productivity. Now, that sounds a long way from the rural situation in Norway, okay? But it's not, because we're looking at the concept of productivity in a wide way, and we're saying, well, there's productivity in an economic, industrial sense, and then there's productivity in the sense of what people do in their day-to-day lives, regardless of whether they're contributing to GDP or not. And a lot of good things happen in that area of what we're calling social productivity. So, you know, somebody who's caring for an old person in their community is being socially productive, but they're not contributing to GDP. So we're going to look at that. And we know in NURD there is a lot of interest in studying rural areas. Similarly, from intel that we gathered through being involved in other projects, we know that there's some recommendations heading in the EU's direction about making things more place-based and getting away from the idea of producing policy recommendations at a national or international level, and actually doing things in real places as opposed to abstract things at a high level. So there again, we're connecting place. So we're working perhaps on urban spaces in Romania, urban spaces could be in Italy, rural spaces could be in Norway, urban spaces could be in Norway. But we're looking spatially at this concept of productivity. So we've already made that connection. It's very interesting that you bring up that example. There are those connections to be made. Regarding the documentation and all the other stuff, it's a complete pain. It's annoying, it's frustrating, it's complicated. But unfortunately, that's the way that things are done. One of the things that I hope will come out of METEOR are new networks and new ways of doing this kind of project, which perhaps don't involve that much bureaucracy. The EU like to micromanage, and I think that's a mistake. I think it restricts researchers in what they can do. So, a great question. Go and talk to people at NURD. Things will happen. Take my word for it. And you can contact me afterwards if you want to discuss more. Okay.
Taina?
You were not sure if this was a question, and I'm not sure if this is an answer, but I would also say that you don't always have to. I realize that METEOR is a European project, and you probably are encouraged to continue applying for European funding, but I think one potential strategy would be to apply for smaller funds from different funders who would help you illuminate the different aspects of the thing that you're working. So 20,000 from a foundation, 50,000 from a government organization, and so on, in order to be able to build some sort of strategic combination of people around the project. And there's also some really good Nordic funders, for instance. If you're working in a Nordic context, I'm sure there's also other regional funders. So sometimes splitting the idea into smaller bits and getting the smaller funding, that can be a pain too, but that also gives you some sort of freedom to work with different kinds of topics from different perspectives.
Just very, very quickly, I would like to slightly disagree with Peter, because the Commission, maybe they still like to micromanage, but they see the problem. So now the funding scheme for Horizon project has changed in the past 2 years, I think, significantly. So now in this 2026-27 schemes, I would say 90% of projects, if no more, are a lump sum funded project, which means that you need to prepare kind of a more detailed budget beforehand, but afterwards the money is basically yours, and you do not have to bring on the timesheets and everything that was really a huge pain for every institution participating in the Horizon projects. This is now gone, and you're only accountable for delivering the deliverables that you promised in the application. And I think this is heading into much better direction. So the Commission sees that, they act slowly as always, but those lump sum projects are much easier to manage right now. Yeah.
Any other comments? If not, then we have a question over there. I think it's off. Make sure it's now on mute.
Okay. Yeah. Right. Thank you. So what is the best way to build a networking? My question is from that I've met a lot of people, a lot of researchers, and I believe that a lot of them don't remember me. So do you have some practical tips to do that in an effective way?
Okay, so I can start with that. They might not remember you, but if you would, write to them and just, say, okay, we met at this conference, they might remember. And even if not, they might pretend that they do remember. And people that do projects, there are, if you're in this river, you are kind of grateful for those opportunities that are coming to you as well. So even if they're a little bit more experienced as well, they might not have their hands on every call. And if you point some interesting call for them and already presenting yourself as a possible partner, this is sometimes a good start, and people appreciate that. So I would not hesitate in contacting them. So basically, try to talk to people, and then I would start with the assumption that they do remember me, but maybe remind them from where, and just go for it. People will be sometimes they will ignore you. That, as Peter mentioned, these are not people you want to work with. Either way, so this is a win-win situation, and then some people will appreciate that, and that could be a good start.
Daina? Well, go come first, then Daina.
Being a member of networking, it's not too easy every time, but I agree with John about talking with much more with colleagues, not just a small talk. Giving in the conversation, you explain your idea, your backgrounds, or also your insight about some topics. And when you encounter more than one or two conferences, one or two different meetings, they are familiar with your faces, and also not just faces, and also your understanding on your shared explanation about any topics. During the process, the networking is going much more your expectation. Don't do being not conversation between any things, anyone during the process or during the meeting, conferences. That's why it's not focused on small talk. Your ideas is important for all colleagues and also who is interested similar subject. That's the way to being a member of the networking, I think.
Yeah, I think I would also like to add that I'm kind of like a highly functioning introvert myself. I hate conferences. I hate when people come to talk to me there. I hate going to talk to people at conferences. So I like to listen. I like to, if I even go to conferences anymore, I like to listen and then send emails afterwards, because people are overwhelmed at conferences anyway. So a lot of people might hit somebody who's doing a really interesting presentation immediately after their presentation. They might not be in a place that they can even talk about things. So an email afterwards, hey, I heard you talk at the conference. That was really interesting. I'm having this idea. Can we talk? And echoing Peter, if they don't respond, then you know that's your cue. They were not for you.
Okay, finish up. Oh,
Yeah, just so it was just a very good point here, just to present yourself always with your set of skills, as then you are associated with your set of skills and you can fill in that gaps that people sometimes are looking for, right? So we already talked. I already know a little bit about your background. I will remember that if I have a need for a person like that in a project, or then I will remember that probably. So always present yourself not in a very broad sense, but with your set of skills.
okay.
Yeah,
Do
and
we have
I'd
other comments from panel? Yeah, Peter.
Sorry. Yeah, I'd maybe just add to that. It's good to provide a vehicle for further communication. So it's not just about emailing somebody and saying, here I am, I've got these skills, but saying, here I am, I'm working on this area and I'm writing an article about XYZ. Do you want to be part of that? Something like that, or as Taina said, small calls or workshop funding, anything like that, but anything that will force the other person to continue the conversation. Just one other point about networks is that they don't need to be enormous. So I spent a lot of time when I'm traveling deleting contacts from my phone, because I realized I had about 500 or 600 sets of contact details, and the vast majority of those people were people that I've no need or interest in contacting in the foreseeable future. So I just started deleting them, and I'm down to about 120 now, and most of those are people that I could probably delete anyway. I think my really strong close contact network is only in maybe the 20s or 30s. So, and even then you're not in touch with those every day. So you don't need to think.
You don't have to know anyone when everybody knows you, Peter.
Yeah.
Well, that's true,
We're not
yeah.
deleting your contact.
Yeah. Well, maybe you will soon, but anyway, yeah, that's my thoughts on that.
Okay, we have, I think, time for at least one more question. Venetia.
Hello? Okay, thank you, everyone. I would just like to sort of like piggyback off, off your question earlier about sort of language. And I was just wondering, is there ever an example of where a conceptual understanding or terms, so thinking about terminologies, where it has to differ or it should differ due to the context that you're working in? So I'm thinking of like subjective terms like equity or belonging or something like that. For example, if I wanted to approach one of these terms, or if I was coming from a decolonial perspective, for example, how might that work? I think it might relate back to how we understand knowledge, research, epistemologies. But yeah, so I was just wondering, is there an example where a term might or should differ, especially if it's subjective due to your context that you're working in? Thank you.
Challenging question. Who would like to pick up on that?
Okay, well, maybe I'll start just to let the others think more clearly than I am. But no, that's a really important question. We've had a couple of projects at University which have actually used the term decolonialization or related things to that.
I'm part of at least one of them.
You are, yeah. So you can talk to Terry about that later, but expanding the meaning of a term and looking at its implications is very important. I think I mentioned earlier about educational inequalities, and from the sort of Commission perspective and from a lot of educational research perspectives, inequality is seen as simply being a product of socioeconomic status. It's seen as unproblematic. Now, some people have better education opportunities than others, and it's up to the education system to remedy that. But again, as soon as you look at that from a range of perspectives, you look at it with a microscope rather than with a telescope, you zoom in on things, it becomes much more complicated. But that's good. And that discussion of its complications, the implications according to your positionality in relation to that term, that's when you start to get a real understanding of what's going on and what needs to be changed. So, yeah, I think terminology is really important. You need to get to a common understanding with people who are working on it with you, and then you need to get to a common understanding which will appeal to the funders, and then you need to get to a common understanding which appeals to your stakeholders and works with them. So if you can get an understanding of, say, educational inequality that enables young people to turn their lives around in some way and make themselves less unequal, that's great. But it's got to work at those three levels: individual or group, funder, and then the wider world where the research actually has to impact.
And before I give the floor to Taina, then also if you're studying decolonialism or decolonization, and then your project isn't working in that way, if your own data collection methods, for example, are very much embedded into the colonial system or sort of Western understandings or knowledge, it's going to ring a little bit false for the evaluators or possibly your reviewers during the project, because in EU projects you also go through the midterm reviews or possibly a review every year. So that's also something you also have to kind of like look at yourself and the way that your project works itself. So, but now, Taina.
Yeah, that's a really important question, and I'm also thinking about cases where a researcher might also be an activist in the field, and I would just say, this is of course also a risky thing, but like be open about your own like approaches, where you come from, because otherwise it's like Terhi said, if it only starts coming out later that you also want to, for instance, be an activist, it's just an example, or if you have a particular critical perspective towards things and the others don't, then that can also be difficult for the consortium. So one of those things that just needs to be negotiated very early on during the drafting of the consortium, and just, yeah, but really important, because I think this relates to also the understanding of knowledge, for instance.
Do the other panelists also want to say something?
I want to add that if you read the calls for Horizon projects, for example, I think it is quite clear that they are quite often, if not mostly, written from a policy perspective, but they do require research answers. So it is your job as researchers to provide a framework which will answer those policy calls in your research, language. You're not super constrained in that. Various, theoretical approaches are valid, and as long as they correspond, you have to be in a dialogue with the text of the call, which is, as I said, more policy-oriented usually, or originates from a policy problem. So the colonial perspective is as valid as any other, as long as it is shared among the consortium members. This is true. And with this issue of mixing sometimes different roles of researcher, activists, and so on, this is also something that happened to a Horizon program during past few years. If you would look at the consortia that were formed 10 years ago, I would say they were mostly universities. So academics working with academics on academic projects. And now, if you look at the consortia that we are trying to set up now, it is usually, here we have a lot of academic partners, because this is about PhD students. Obviously, PhD students are associated with academic partners. But in general, in other projects, we usually, if we have 12 partners, I would say we have maybe 2, 3 universities, we have NGOs, we have private companies, we have social partners, so trade unions, employees associations, all different types of organizations that bring people in very different roles. So it is nothing wrong in not fitting the perfect researcher role as well. There is a place for you in the project as well if the project is designed in a way that gives you that space. But these are research and innovation projects, these are not academic projects per se. So.
Gökhan, would you want to say something on this?
Yeah, I agree with all panelists about this subject, but you should agree on basic concept and language when you apply EU calls. Peter explained that some EU priorities about the calls, but you should negotiate all partners about these using the language, and it's important EU white papers to apply in a project. In some cases, we use bold characters to show the EU targeted words and concepts, because in the EU project, it's not to want to well-prepared scientific research, not to always wanted to, not required, but they are required give their support perspectives or finding a way to their policies in implementation process. That's why giving a money to who wants to implement or their policy or develop their policy. That's why, like a company, EU, working a company, not main focus on scientific perspective, well prepared. Sometimes we prepared a good project, but not the concern EU priorities and concept is not accepted. But some project is not well prepared in means of scientific perspective, but they accept it because their regulation, their policy, their implementation goes the same way. So you think about the EU is like a company has a big money, giving the money to who in the same way with the EU.
Now we have one more minute for each of the panelists. I'm sorry, we have to continue the conversation over the break, but we have 1 more minute for the panelists each. Gökhan, you can start. What kind of advice would you give to these groups that will now start putting together their own research proposals? For imaginary funding call. 1 minute each.
Yeah, okay. Start with not a big idea, just a small steps, beginning of the project, and invest the time in understanding each other and deciding to how to proceed the process, and not to feel the administrative work. Take your time and learning the process, not to think about just filling the template. This is the learning process. That's take your time and not being obligatory or compulsory work during the process.
Johanna?
So remain open, this kind of diversity in expertise, I think it strengthens the project, but it also increases the need for clear communication and coordination and mutual respect, I would say.
Vasily?
Okay, so maybe my advice would be to try to think about ideas that are of a different scale. This is also different types of designs of the project. So the project for 3 million can have one huge study that is, a grand idea that costs a lot of money, but it can also be a series of smaller ideas that are well connected and also will work good together. And if you do employ this tactic of thinking of ideas of a different scale, it might also happen that you will come up with an idea that you can actually execute within some funding scheme for a small project to do something outside of METEOR, but based on your METEOR experience, maybe with our support. So thinking about ideas of different scales, I think could be beneficial.
Taina?
Try to keep things simple, and what I mean by this is be open about your own ideas, be open about the way in which you come into that situation. Also, don't be afraid of conflict. That's just one way of sorting out differences between people. Try to eat together.
And Peter, as the father of the project, the final word is yours.
I was just about to say, do as you're told there, but actually it's the exact opposite of that. So don't do what we tell you. No, I think 3 things. Just reach out to people, have fun, and ask lots of questions. That's it.
Okay, thank you, everyone.